The first night it happened, I told myself it was nothing. Before I start, if you enjoy slow, unsettling horror stories that stay with you long after the video ends, make sure you subscribe now, because this story doesn't scream for attention. It waits, and once it notices you, it doesn't stop. I was staying in a rented house on the edge of a small town. Not abandoned, not old enough to be famous for anything, just quiet. The kind of place where the nights feel longer than they should. The owner warned me about one thing before handing over the keys. He said, "If you hear footsteps upstairs, don't assume someone broke in. This house settles at night." He smiled when he said it, like it was a joke. I laughed, too. I shouldn't have. The first sound came around 2:17 a.m. I remember the time because my phone lit up just as it happened. A soft, deliberate step above the ceiling. Not a creak, a step. As if someone had carefully placed their foot down, testing the floor. I froze, listening. Then another step, slower this time, moving from the back bedroom toward the stairs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then it stopped. The next morning, I checked the house. Every door locked, every window closed. No signs of anyone else. I told myself it was old wood and nerves. But that night, it happened again. Same time, same careful steps. This time, I heard something else. A pause at the top of the stairs, like whoever it was stood there, listening. On the third night, the footsteps didn't stop upstairs. They came down. One step, then another. Slow, heavy, purposeful. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the open doorway, waiting to see something, anything, but nothing appeared. The steps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. Then, after a long silence, I heard breathing. Not mine. It sounded close. Too close. I slept with the lights on after that, or tried to. Every night, the sounds continued. Sometimes footsteps, sometimes a chair scraping lightly across the floor upstairs, even though no one was there. Once, I heard a door open and close. I stopped checking after that. I was afraid of what I might find. I started noticing changes during the day. Objects slightly out of place. A mug I didn't remember using left in the sink. The couch cushion pressed down like someone had been sitting there for a long time. I checked for carbon monoxide. I checked the locks again and again. Everything was normal. Too normal. One evening, I recorded audio on my phone before going to sleep. I wanted proof, something I could listen to in the morning and laugh about. At 3:11 a.m., the recording captured footsteps, clear, measured, followed by something that made my stomach turn. A whisper, low, calm, right next to the microphone. It said my name. I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It sounded familiar, the way a voice does when you've heard it many times but can't remember where. The worst part was the tone. It sounded patient, like it had all the time in the world. After that night, the thing, whatever it was, stopped staying upstairs. I would hear it moving in the hallway outside my bedroom, sometimes stopping right at the door, sometimes walking away only to return minutes later. It never knocked, never tried to enter. It didn't need to. It wanted me awake, listening. One night, I whispered into the dark, "What do you want?" The footsteps stopped instantly. Then, from right outside the door, something whispered back, "I live here." I left the house the next morning, packed everything, didn't look back. I stayed with a friend across town. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. No sounds, no footsteps, no breathing. I told myself it was over. Until my friend asked me a question over breakfast. "Why were you walking around the hallway last night?" he said. "You stopped outside my door for a while, just standing there." I laughed it off. I said I must have been sleepwalking. But my hands were shaking because I knew the truth. I had been asleep all night. When I went back to the house to return the keys, the owner looked relieved to see me. He asked if I heard the footsteps. I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "They always leave eventually," he said. "The house doesn't like being empty." I asked him who lived there before me. He paused, then said, "Everyone does, for a while." If this story unsettled you and you want to hear more experiences like this, stories where no one can say for sure what's real and what isn't, stay with us and make sure you're subscribed. Some houses don't stay quiet forever. It was the kind of small village that felt like it had been forgotten by the rest of the world. Nestled deep in the mountains, with mist curling through the pines every morning, it seemed quiet, almost peaceful. Yet for anyone who stayed beyond the first week, the village revealed its strange nature. I arrived there in early autumn, carrying nothing but a backpack and curiosity. I had heard tales of the fog that watches, whispered by travelers in neighboring towns. No one ever stayed long enough to describe it fully, and the locals would only smile when asked about it, saying things like, "Some things are better left unseen." The first night, I set up my small cabin on the edge of the forest. The air smelled of wet leaves and pine resin. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw movement in the fog, forms that didn't belong to any human or animal. I shrugged it off. Mist plays tricks, right? Hours later, I heard something at the window, a soft scratching, almost deliberate. I stood up, peering out into the fog, but there was nothing, just the white curtain of mist and the faint outline of trees. My heart raced. I tried to sleep, telling myself it was just branches brushing against the glass. Then I noticed a pattern. Every night at exactly 2:03 a.m., the scratching returned. Sometimes on the window, sometimes on the door, sometimes just outside my cabin, barely audible over the wind. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. On the third night, I woke to a sound that made my blood run cold. A voice, low, almost sighing, coming from just outside. I couldn't understand the words, not language I knew. It was older somehow, resonating with something deep in my bones. I stayed perfectly still, not daring to breathe. The next day, I asked a local about the watching fog. He looked uneasy but said, "It's not the fog itself, it's what rides the fog. People who come to these woods without respect, they feel it. They see things that follow them." I thought it was folklore, but that night proved otherwise. I took a small camera and left the cabin door slightly open, hoping to capture whatever it was. Hours later, reviewing the footage, I saw something that still haunts me. A tall, indistinct figure moving through the mist. No face, no clear shape, just a shadow stretching unnaturally, moving with intent. I froze. Every step it took seemed to echo inside my chest. For days, the fog followed me. I couldn't leave it behind. Walking through the village, it lingered in corners, brushing against my skin like invisible fingers. At night, the figure was closer. At times, I could hear multiple steps, as if more than one presence had joined it. Yet whenever I ran or tried to confront it, there was nothing, just mist and silence. Locals advised me to leave by the next full moon. They didn't explain why, only that staying beyond it would change something in me. The fog, they said, doesn't like witnesses. And if it notices someone paying too much attention, it begins to follow that person everywhere, even beyond the forest, beyond the village. On the night of the full moon, I packed my gear and started down the mountain trail. The fog was thick, almost suffocating. Through it, I saw dozens of faint silhouettes, shapes stretching, bending, moving against the natural order. Some paused and watched me as I walked. I swear I could feel their eyes drilling into my back, waiting, patient. Hours later, I emerged at the base of the mountain. The village was gone. No houses, no cabins, no trails, just a clearing. The fog had dispersed, or perhaps it had waited. I can't be certain. That night, back in a town hundreds of miles away, I looked at the forest on the horizon and felt it watching still. The camera footage? It vanished, the file corrupted. Nothing remained but my memory and the lingering dread that whatever watches the fog follows those it marks. I will never return, and I warn anyone who hears this story, if you ever wander into deep woods and see fog that moves with a mind of its own, leave. Don't look back. It will remember you. Ever since I was a child, I was drawn to old houses. Not the haunted ones you read about online, but the quiet ones, standing empty on the outskirts of towns, their paint peeling, windows dark. They called to me. Something in the silence whispered a promise of secrets. I never understood why I was drawn until that summer, when I found the house that would change everything I thought I knew about fear. The village where it stood was forgotten, a patchwork of stone cottages and overgrown gardens. Locals avoided the house, speaking only in hushed tones when it came up, and even then they always warned me, "You shouldn't go there, it doesn't like strangers." Of course, curiosity pushed me forward. I wanted to see, to feel, to understand. I arrived at dusk. The sun, fading behind the hills, cast long shadows across the cracked cobblestone road. The house was larger than it seemed in pictures, 3 stories, looming, with windows like dark eyes. The door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick, untouched for years, with the scent of old wood, dust, and something metallic. Almost like iron, but not blood, not yet. The first night, I slept in the main hallway. I didn't turn on a light. I wanted to hear the house breathing. Around 2:04 a.m., I did. A faint whisper, like silk brushing against the wall, calling my name. I froze. The sound wasn't angry, it wasn't pleading. It was curious, deliberate, and it came from upstairs. I followed it, step by step, each footfall loud against the wooden floor. At the top of the stairs, a hallway stretched farther than it should have. Doors that didn't exist in the architectural plan opened slightly, shadows spilling out. I stopped at the first door. Behind it, the faint glow of a figure, shapeless, shifting, watching. I swallowed hard, but before I could move, it was gone. Not vanished, just absent, like it had never been there at all. The next morning, I explored the house. Nothing was out of place except the faint scratches on the floorboards. They weren't random. They formed shapes, circles, symbols, almost like a map. I documented everything. I couldn't explain it. The house had its own logic, its own language, and I was a student fumbling to learn it. For days I stayed, moving from room to room, documenting. Each night, whispers, footsteps, fleeting shadows. The house didn't want to harm me, not yet. It was testing me, watching how I reacted, what I feared, what I noticed. At times, I felt a hand brush my shoulder in the dark, cold but not forceful. A presence guiding me, nudging me toward rooms I would never have entered on my own. One night, around midnight, I awoke to a faint humming. It was melodic, sorrowful, and it drew me toward the basement. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to stay upstairs, but I followed. The stairs were narrow, twisting, impossibly long. When I reached the bottom, the air was colder than ice, my breath visible, forming clouds that lingered unnaturally. The basement was empty, or so I thought. In the corner, a figure crouched, its back toward me. Slowly, it turned. No face, just a smooth, featureless surface like polished stone. And yet I felt eyes, deep, knowing, seeing into me. It raised one arm and pointed toward the far wall. I looked, heart hammering, and saw a series of photographs, black and white images of the house over decades. Each photograph contained a figure standing in the same corner I now stood. I realized then, it had been here before me, always, watching, waiting. Weeks passed. I began to understand patterns. The house revealed itself in layers. Each room had a memory, a story trapped in walls. Sometimes the stories were pleasant, children playing, laughter echoing faintly. Other times the stories were dark, shadows moving where no one stood. I started to feel the presence not as a threat, but as a companion. It showed me its history, its pain, its loneliness. But the house demanded respect. One night I laughed too loudly, disturbed the silence, and I felt its anger. The air thickened, shadows condensed into forms. The whispering rose to a crescendo, accusing, disappointed. I froze. It wasn't violent, it didn't need to be. Silence fell after I humbled myself. I bowed, apologized to the house, and it calmed. This taught me the most important rule. Acknowledge the unknown, respect it, and it respects you in return. On my final night, as I packed to leave, I walked every room one last time. I whispered a quiet thank you, and the house seemed to sigh, content. The shadows receded, the whispers softened. As I stepped outside, the first rays of dawn painted the roof in gold. I realized I had not just survived, I had learned something ancient.
Now, I tell you this story not to frighten, though it is frightening. I tell it because the unknown exists in many forms: houses, forests, memories, and even in ourselves. Fear is natural, but courage is understanding. When you face what you cannot explain, you might tremble, but you also grow stronger. If you felt the chill of this story, remember this: not all fear is harmful. Some fear teaches you, prepares you, and makes your heart resilient. Stand firm, stay curious, and respect the mysteries around you. And above all, know that sometimes the scariest things are also the most enlightening. If you enjoyed this story and want more chilling tales that blur the line between reality and the unknown, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. The house is always waiting, but only for those brave enough to listen.